Hey everyone, welcome back. One aspect about Star Trek that is discussed in interviews and among fans is that Star Trek is about you. It's about me. It's about humanity overcoming whatever it is that's in the way. It does it with regular people. There are exceptions, but in Star Trek, those exceptions are Khan, Bashir, Augment, those of genetic enhancements, or
Alvin, take us out of here.
Elizabeth Danner, Gary Mitchell, those who have had encounters with strange radiation activating latent genes. Charlie X, raised by otherworldly powers that adapt his genome in a similar manner as theirs without him losing his human form. And then there's the aliens, whether the flavor of the week or longtime regulars had their otherworldly abilities. But humans, you and me, not unless something outside caused a change. In fact, there's a scene in Enterprise's episode Shuttlepod 1, which Tucker references Superman. Remember? Reed is chastising, Tucker's negative comment about Ulysses, about you North Americans, all you do is read comic books. Tucker responds, I'll have you know, Superman was laced with nuance, which demonstrates that the world of Star Trek has incorporated our modern mythos into its own, but it also recognizes that it's only a myth and there aren't humans with super or mutated powers beyond those of others.
Sometimes I think you North Americans read nothing but comic books and those ridiculous science fiction novels.
I'll have you know that Superman was laced with metaphor. Subtext layered on subtext.
But there's one exception. Hoshi Sato.
You might think about recommending seatbelts when we get home.
It's just a little bad weather.
We're about to talk about the most based, most underrated, most criminally slept on character in the entire Star Trek franchise. Ensign Hoshi Sato from Enterprise. And yeah, I said it. The first and only real superheroine Trek ever gave us. Not enhanced, not mutated by space radiation, not even a secret Klingon hybrid. Just a regular human woman who rolled a genetic natural 20 and walked on to the NX-01 with a straight-up cognitive superpower. Look, every other Trek superhuman is a cheat code. As I already showed you. Khan, eugenics. Gary Mitchell, Elizabeth Danner, galactic barrier juice. Bashir, illegal DNA resequencing his parents paid for, on the down low. Even 7 of 9, literally, Borg implant. Even Spock being half alien. Hoshi, though, 0 external buffs. She just showed up to the party with what amounts to savant-level pattern recognition that treats every language, human or alien, don't forget the mathematics, like regional dialects of the same language hardwired into her skull since birth. This woman hears a Klingon battle rant or some clicking insectoid garbage and in 30 seconds goes, oh yeah, that's just passive voice with ejective consonants. Give me 10 minutes.
I'm not sure, but I think he said something about eating the afterlife. If it's intelligent, maybe we can communicate with it. The frequency distortions, they look a lot like the phonetic patterns in certain Andorian dialects.
With all due respect, Hoshi, it could take you days to learn a language like that, even if it is one.
What other choice do we have?
That's not training. That's not the universal translator. That's a 1 in a million brain that literally perceives grammar the way the rest of us perceive color. And Starfleet looked at that and said, yeah, put her on the bridge. She's our comms officer. That's peak meritocracy, baby. And here's the wild part. The writers knew exactly what they were doing. They consulted actual linguists, modeled her off real-life hyperpolyglot savants such as Daniel Tammet, Ken Hale, people who had legitimately learned fluent Icelandic in a week on a game show. Because to them, it's just a funny accent on the deep structure they already know.
And forget the translator. Do it yourself. Talk to him.
possible, sir? I haven't even learned their basic conjugations. I'll get it all wrong. It'll just make things worse.
Hoshi isn't plot convenient. She's the show quietly admitting that baseline humanity already produces mutants. People with extraordinary abilities, maybe even superhuman abilities. And cut to the opening, that's the reason I threw in Superman, X-Men, the Green Lantern Corps, Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, and Guy Gardner. Because one gets his powers from a yellow sun, the others through mutations of their genetic structure. And finally, through technological devices that they wear as rings. Hoshi, she does it because of her natural aptitude. And in this case, humanity produced a really polite and a really useful one that isn't locked up in a lab because they'd rather teach exolinguistics in Brazil than rule the world. So while the rest of Star Trek is out here doing, oh, what if we break the Prime Directive and crank the IQ to 300? Enterprise just shrugs and says, nah, some chicks are already low-key superheroes if you bother to notice. And then they never made a big deal out of it because Hoshi's too humble to flex. That's why she's the realest power fantasy Trek ever dropped. Not the person who got injected with God serum, but the person who was born this good and still chose to serve on a ship. Hoshi Sato, first and only real superheroine in the franchise. Change my mind. Drop it in the comments. Let's go. And coming up, way down the line in some future video, as I showed Hoshi as a low-key, humble, diligent about her work and crewmates individual, but is she Star Trek's only superhuman? I'd appreciate it if you do the like, subscribe, share, comment. Have yourself a great day.